I've done some podcasts called Of, By, For the People, and it's with some different friends. Brandon Lewis, Clay Dennis, John Ballinger was one of the originals, and he's going to join us again soon, and my buddy Eric Buchanan. And basically what we do is we talk about the American experiment from, we've said it before, from the conference table to the dinner table. It affects every part of our life. And it's just, we talk about it differently, I think, than we used to. Either that, or maybe we don't. Maybe it's always been that way, but because of social media and everybody now has a platform, maybe it's just in our face more than it used to be. But with all that being said, Eric has always referenced this group, Braver Angels. And I've always said he's making up that organization so he can point to the organization to say things that he wants to say but doesn't take blame for. And so I was worried that Eric was just kidding with us. Eric was joking around. And come to find out, either he's paid somebody who's really smart to come on and play like they're from Braver Angels, or we actually have someone with Braver Angels on with us today. What's up, Eric?
Hey, Clint. How are you? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm really happy. Because you're a smart guy. I was worried that you were kind of going off the deep end, making up names and organizations, but I researched it, braverangels.org, and their website here is on the bottom of the screen. It's also in the description, but we have your co-chairman. Real quick, before I bring her up, tell everybody how the co-chair works, and then we'll get her to explain a little bit about the organization.
So Braver Angels, very briefly, because this makes how it makes sense for the co-chairmanship, is an organization trying to help people both on the right and the left come together that love America, respect each other's differences. We're not trying to change each other's minds. And for each of the leadership positions, they try to have a red person and a blue person, a left-leaning person and a right-leaning person. And I am the red-leaning co-chair for Tennessee for Braver Angels, and Lynn Heady, who's about to come up.
Lynn Heady.
I did the exact opposite in my head. Lynn Heady is the Tennessee co-chair, and she's been a member of the organization and in a leadership position a lot longer than I have. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for jumping on. And I just want to be really transparent before we get started. The three of us, the other two, other than myself, are really smart compared to me. But I will say Lynn had a much easier time navigating technology, my friend Eric Buchanan, than you did the first time through. She is a rock star.
I'm not surprised, Eric.
We said off air, I think education went downhill after they stopped using slate tablets at each person's desk.
Yes, and when they stopped using
Indeed. Yes.
When they stopped using.
He is paying me to do this, so I do appreciate your
when they stopped using your crops your pause crops to do math problems, I think we all went downhill after that. So, all right. So a couple of ground rules here, and I want to make sure everybody understands what the organization's about. Lynn, I'm going to shoot that to you in just a second. But one thing, technology speaking, and I didn't say this, and I'm the world's worst, is if I try to talk over one of you, it will mute the other person. So I'm going to do my best to make sure everybody finishes their sentences before I start talking. So I'm just saying that now, and that's a shot across the bow for everybody, because I don't want Eric to make you mad, Lynn, and then you have to jump in and try to talk over him because he's an attorney. It may be tough. Hey, tell everybody, Lynn, a little bit about the organization. And I know Eric did somewhat, but what is the organization and why did you become a part of it?
Well, I'm going to start with why I became a part of it, because I think that's an important story. Leading up to and through the 2016 election, I am a liberal, an unabashed and proud liberal. I was disappointed, to say the least, but not so much in what the choice was. I mean, I believe in the system, and even though there were mutterings, I believe that it was working. And what I was most distressed about was exactly what was happening, which you described, Clint, at the beginning, which is that people just weren't talking to each other. They were talking over each other. They weren't discussing things. And it got to the point where I had a lot of red friends that I lost. And I was really upset about it. And so I went the normal route. I looked at groups that thought like me and went to those meetings. And after one or two meetings sitting there, I thought, this isn't what I want. This isn't going to satisfy me. I'm speaking to the choir. And I do that enough in other settings. So a friend of mine called and said that at the time we were called Better Angels, that Better Angels was coming to Tennessee. They were just starting this group. Did I want a seat, a blue seat at their workshop? And so I went. And there were 8 reds, 8 blues, 2 facilitators, and cameras. And we went through an intense all-day workshop where we learned to talk to each other. We learned to listen to each other. We had the opportunity to understand each other. And after a while, it didn't matter if we were red or blue. We were Americans. And after about an hour and a half of that, I said, this is it for me. That to me is what Braver Angels is about. We are about being brave enough to put all that garbage behind us and talk to each other as Americans, because like Eric said, we all love our country. It doesn't belong to anybody. I was born on July 3rd, and I always tell the story. My dad used to say to me, the fireworks were because your country's so happy to see you. And you know what? I still believe that. It really, I'm very patriotic. I am very much grateful for being in this country. And Braver Angels allows me to talk with others, to find solutions, and to work together to bring us back to where we were, which I miss.
I think one of the things when I hear you tell that, one of the things I've mentioned several times on the other podcast is how disappointed I am in us, we the people, sometimes when I disagree with Lynn, that I've got to label you something, right? You've got to be unpatriotic because you don't agree with me. So instead of listening to you and understanding that you probably have some of the same goals that I have, you love your family like I love my family, you get sick, you have money issues, we have a lot in common, right? Instead of that, I've got to label you because we disagree. And I just think the way we're talking to each other now with these labels, it does 2 things. And Eric's going to hear a lot of stuff I've said before, but it hides the real problems. So if everybody that disagrees with me is X, Y, or Z, then there's going to be real problems lying in the weeds that we never get to. There's racist people out there. But if everybody's a racist, then the real racists can hide amongst the propaganda. If everybody's unpatriotic that disagrees with me, well, in my mind, right, I can be hateful to Eric if he disagrees with me because he's unpatriotic. And so I'm glad that there's an organization around that's getting past the labels. And I actually wrote this down. I bet there's people now, if they were to join an organization like this, would almost have to rethink how they communicate with people because we've been so conditioned just to try to change people's minds with headlines. Eric, is that not one of the frustrations you have had?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that drew me to Braver Angels, and I joined much later than Lynn, I joined this past summer, was I was looking for a group where I knew people on the left and right didn't disagree as adamantly as I was seeing on Facebook, for example. Or if you try to go to any news source, the news sources have become so divided that it's hard to find a neutral news source that actually addresses any of the hard questions of the day that you can trust. And looking around for people to have conversations with, to frankly learn for real whether people on the left were all turning to the far, far, far left that hated America. And I didn't think that was true, but I wanted to kind of verify that. And I was looking for an opportunity to talk to some more people who disagreed with me politically, but didn't disagree that we still love the United States. And so one of the things that drew me to Braver Angels was the idea that they believe in patriotic empathy. And that phrase really spoke to me. Patriotic empathy, the idea that our love of our country is shown by our concern for our fellow citizens. The fact that most people are still somewhere in the middle. We might disagree on policies. We might disagree on the right balance of taxes and capitalism and regulation and all those kind of things. But somehow we've gotten to the point where if you want a little regulation, then you're a far left communist. If you want a little less regulation, then you are an evil capitalist. And those kind of labels and attacks, and like most of us see on Facebook, if you try to post anything political, you've either weeded out your Facebook friends or you're just going to have just sniping and bickering back and forth. There's no real conversations. And those conversations are not happening in other places. So That's one of the things that attracted me to Braver Angels, was a place where we can have the conversations politely, civilly, learn how to talk to each other or get better at talking to each other. And to me, most importantly, without necessarily trying to change each other's minds. I'm not here to tell Lynn that the Democrat Party has bad policy positions. We might discuss them politely, but if she wants to continue to believe that, that's her belief. That's where she sits politically. That's her American right to think that way. And I'm the same way as someone who's probably a libertarian leaning Republican. That they're not trying to change. Braver Angels is not going to try to change my mind, but allow us to talk and understand and empathize with each other and see where we're coming from. And it's really, I think one of the most important things that it's helped me with is to recognize that there are a lot of people that are closer to the middle, that still want to talk to each other, that love America, and that recognize that the polarization is as big a problem as the other side's policies that you disagree with, if not worse.
And Clint, you said something at the before this little section about communication, that we've forgotten how to communicate with each other. Eric, you just reminded me, I'm an educator. That's been my lifelong profession. We haven't learned how to communicate with each other. And so Braver Angels made sense to me because we do things through workshops. We bring people together to teach them these skills. We have a workshop called Bridging the Divide, which does nothing more than concentrate on good listening skills and good speaking skills. And it brings to life for everybody around the table the kinds of things we're saying that we don't realize we're saying. And Eric and I just had one of these the other day. I made a statement that Eric gave me a timeout. He said, not everybody feels this way, or you made a very blue statement. We have to learn to be sensitive to what's going to ricochet when we say it. And that's what our workshops are about, is how do you say it the right way, if indeed your heart's in the right place, which is that you're there not to change somebody, but to truly understand them.
Yeah, I wrote something down and you kind of addressed it. I was wondering is when at least I can imagine, if I got into an organization like this, almost like with everything else, if you go into it with the right mindset, there's a lot of self-discovery, right? Not only how do I understand Lynn better? And not only is the focus on how can I understand you, but more importantly, learning how I communicate. And you said the word being sensitive towards it. And again, I get a little, I'm like, we don't need to be sensitive if we're going to be talking. It's free speech. But my point on that is, though, if I want to be effective, if I want to be understood, if I really want the best outcomes in these conversations, then I think I need to, if you don't like the word sensitive, replace it with something else. But I need to be sensitive to what I'm saying, not because I don't want to offend you necessarily, just because I want to make sure that you understand I'm coming from a good and honest place. And that's the thing. I wrote down you guys have already said a bunch of stuff that I wrote down future questions for, but the trusting each other is a big deal. When you come from the social media, CNN versus Fox world, where everybody gets paid for the clicks, where the headlines a lot of times don't represent the truth that's in the article. They just need to click to sell to the advertisers. When I walk into a room filled with Eric's and Lynn's, there's a lot of deprogramming for Clint that probably has to go on, right? I mean, isn't there's some stuff you got to pull away from yourself if I'm going to talk honestly and not try to get you.
Yeah, exactly. And funny you use the word get you, because we focus in on what's a good question to ask somebody and what's a gotcha question. Because if you're doing a gotcha question, you ain't going to get there. You're not going to get an answer. You're going to raise somebody's blood pressure, and that's the end of it. Let me say that a lot of what you said at the beginning was very Braver Angels of you. So I think you did really well in that room. Let me begin there. But also, it's not only being sensitive to what I'm saying, it's having the trust that Eric in a meeting the other day was able to say to me, whoa, Lynn, you just said something you shouldn't have said. And I appreciate that. I don't get angry with them. I don't come back at them. I say, you're right. Here's what I really meant, but my bad. I shouldn't have said it that way. So it's having that thing that we used to always have with each other, where we could be honest with each other and open with each other. And the media has done everything. And sorry, our politicians have done everything in their power to keep us from having these conversations. And we, the people, need to say it's enough already. It's up to us. We can't wait for that to happen.
Eric, was there some deprogramming on your end, or were you like a desert waiting for the water? Was it refreshing?
So yeah, a couple things. So let me go back to what Lynn was saying. I wasn't actually correcting her because she said something horribly evil, but it was
time out, Eric. Time out.
Yeah, but when we have these conversations, what's interesting, it is an opportunity. Here's a simple one. I've seen people write letters and drafts for Braver Angels, and they'll say something about our democracy. And a lot of people are like, okay, that's fine, whatever. But what they don't realize, because in their group of people, that's kind of a normal thing to say. But for people on the right, that's a trigger word, because I've been hearing this since I was in Boy Scouts. The United States is not a democracy; we're a republic, and there's an important distinction. And why is that true? And it's no big deal once you have the conversation, especially if you can do it in the right mindset to say, yeah, I understand why you've always said it's a democracy. I'm not offended by that. It's just that here's the other point of view, that we are a representative constitutional republic, and the reason we're not a democracy is a democracy. Everybody gets a vote on every single issue, and it politically arguably tends toward mob rule, and it's a different creature. And it's sometimes, for some people on the right, you're going to run them off, and they're not going to be ready for having an open conversation if you invite them in by saying, come help save our democracy. And they're going to be like, I'm not joining anything that calls the United States a democracy. But other people don't even realize that's an issue. And it's those kind of just the little conversations to get it started that are it's ultimately, if you're able to come to it with an open heart and an open mind, it's no big deal. It's just learning from each other. And that's such a key part of it. And the second part of your question, Clint, is you asked, when I came to it, how did I feel? And I did feel like someone who was dying of thirst and in the desert and had finally found an oasis with a pool that I could dive into. As an attorney, I am in one of the very few professions that is taught how to argue with other people in a way that is civil, that when I get done with a tough court case, I can still go out and have lunch or dinner with the attorney on the other side, and we can have a civil conversation. One of my favorite stories, I had a big case in the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati, and the other attorney and I had been contentious throughout the case. He pulled some moves that I didn't think were appropriate. He probably thought I had done some stuff wrong. And the night before our oral arguments before the Court of Appeals, one step below the Supreme Court, I invited him out to dinner in Cincinnati. We went and had a steak dinner. I bought him dinner, and we've been friends ever since, although we've still gone toe-to-toe in some cases. And so I'm in one of those professions that we like to talk about issues and like to argue stuff. And we learn in law school that you argue about stuff and talk about stuff for fun, to learn, to have the dynamic and the interplay, and then you still are friends with the person even if you disagree with them. And for me, I was looking for that more in my life outside of just the practice of law, to have these kind of conversations, but to still be friends with people. It's something I enjoy doing. And there's fewer and fewer places where that's happening. I've had more and more friends start to take the attitude, well, if you like so-and-so, or if you don't agree with me, we can't be friends anymore. How many times have you seen that on social media?
Oh yeah.
And I think that just has to become what's unacceptable, is to say that.
First of all, I agree with you. The words are important. So, when you use the example of democracy through republic, well, if it's mob rule is just a vacuum. Mob rules don't last forever. Somebody will step in and fill the vacuum of leadership. So that's why those are dangerous. But it's important because I wrote down learning each other's definitions of certain terms, right? I mean, because everybody brings their different story to the table when you're talking about the American experiment. How Lynn grew up is different than how I grew up. Someone of color is different than how I grew up. And when we come to the table, when we say the word politician, everybody may have a different thing that pops in their brain. If we say the word leadership, or we say the word democracy or America, everybody may have different things. So how much of the time, Lynn, are you spending on figuring out just the common ground terms and definitions of, when I say this, does it mean the same to you, right?
That's a great question. And after 3.5 years in the organization, I'm still learning. So let me start there, because those definitions tend to change. And
Yeah.
just when you think you got it, here comes another way someone interprets it. But we have a thing called one-on-one conversations, which is another one of our designs, where you can choose to do a 2-hour online conversation with somebody who is on the other side of you, either politically or racially, or the most interesting ones now are the urban versus rural, where you get to really, communicate with somebody whose lifestyle is totally different. For me to tell my story, my growing up story, who I was. My dad was a laborer. I was the first one to go to college in my family. That kind of gives me a way to connect with somebody else. And they tell their story. We always find something similar before we jump into our political opinions. And that's the beauty of the way the Braver Angels experiences are designed. They're designed not to jump in and assume that we know what we're doing. They're designed to, number one, you said it at the very beginning when you and I spoke, building relationships is what it's all about. We're human to human. And once we build the relationships, once we learn about each other, and then we learn the skills to communicate effectively, we're bound to be successful at what we do.
Isn't it so odd? And it's, Facebook warriors are, keyboard warriors that will call people names. But when you're talking to somebody, I've got friends from all different perspectives. Some were born rich, some were born poor, some made themselves rich. They're black, they're white, they're yellow, lifestyles, whatever. And it's really easy to call Lynn or Eric a name based off a headline I don't like when I don't know Eric or Lynn, right? When I've never spoken to you as a human being. But once I talk to you, I'm going to find out one of two things. Either we have stuff in common, and which we probably do, or you really are not a good person, and at least I know now how to approach you, right? But if I throw the label out there without knowing you, I just think it's really hard in the world we live in now. I think we've lost the ability to go on the other side of what I'm calling somebody, or the anger I'm throwing at Eric. On the other side of that is a person. And if I were in a car wreck right now, Eric would run over and try to help me, and it wouldn't matter who I voted for.
Right. Exactly.
Same thing with Lynn, right, Eric? I mean, that's where we're going.
And now that I've been more involved and I'm in a leadership position and been working with Lynn on trying to get some other local alliances going, we can talk more about that. One of the things we did a big national meeting, had people from all over the country, and one of the things we did, we wrapped up that meeting. What have you got? What do you feel about this? What do you think about this? And the thing that came to my mind was community, the sense of building a national community of friends who are willing to engage with these issues, that are willing to talk about the political divide in America, the polarization, and what we can do about it. And I feel like there's been more of that than there has been actually addressing the issues so far in my involvement in Braver Angels. We've gotten a chance to talk about issues. We've gotten a chance to express our opinions. But more than that is just getting to know other people around the country that disagree politically, but you learn first that they're really nice people. And that's kind of the old-fashioned way that we got to know each other, right? I've got friends that I've been friends with for 20 or 30 years, going back to law school or college, that I've come to the point where we adamantly disagree on politics, but we can have those conversations and still circle back around and remain friends. But people I've known less time are quick to say, "Oh my God, you're a conservative? How evil? How horrible are you?" And the conversations go nowhere. We end up yelling at each other, and we can't be friends anymore. Yeah. So that's it. Building the community first, getting to know people has been, I think, a crucial part of Braver Angels, and a important thing for people to remember.
Lynn, when you first started doing this, and if you can take yourself back to those first few one-on-one conversations you had with people that you knew disagreed with you on policy or brought a different story to the table, were you nervous? Was there things you look back on now going, I should have, you know what I'm saying? Was it one of those, did you embrace it, or were you going like preparing for a test? I'm going to read up on have all my stats. I'm going to
sat down at that table with the 8 reds and 8 blues, my first exposure. The gentleman sitting next to me, because we were seated red, blue, turned to me and said, because we had on either a blue or a red name tag, He said to me, I'm going to tell you right now, I am as red as you will ever see, and you're not going to change my mind about anything. And you talk about stairs. I thought, Lynn, do not move in your seat. Do not turn to the left. Do not. So, but now, Clint, my definition of friend has really changed because, as Eric said, 3.5 years, the last year been nothing but online. I have met people in every state of this country. I also have a national position with Braver Angels, which I started about 6 months ago. I know people across this country who are red, blue, rich, poor, college educated, not college educated. I feel so good about the friends I've made because we have gotten to know each other. We have really related to each other. And then we started talking politics to where we could understand a little bit better. The friends that I used to have are the most interesting of all because they will say to me, well, you're a real sellout. You just, how could you do this? And I will tell you, what you said before rings in my ears. It wasn't about them or selling out or my beliefs. It was about me being able to get up in the morning and look in the mirror and feel good about me doing something that I knew was right. And that's what this is all about. It is a one-to-one. But let me tell you, I'm scared every time I get in one of these because you just don't know. But
yeah, I can understand that. And I've said this a bunch, and it's very disappointing. And again, I think it's a social media. I think it brings out the best and the worst in human beings. Like everything has the potential to do. This is just magnifying it. But we have gotten to a place now to where we hold the other party or the other person so much more accountable than we do our own party and our own person. So I have seen it now to where I will want to vilify the other team, right? Because it's team politics. I want to vilify what Lynn believes. But when my person does it, I trust listen, you don't have any proof. It goes back 15 or 20 years. They're a good person. I like their policies. I'm going to find all these different ways to soften my critique of my team and be super critical of your team, which is not the way it's supposed to be. I would think I would want to be critical of my team so it's the best team we can have. And then Lynn would probably trust Clint a little more if she knew I was going to hold my people accountable for our own BS, right?
One of the activities we do in the Red Blue workshop, you would love it, Clint, is it's called stereotypes. And all the reds get in a room, all the blues get in a room, and you collectively identify the 4 biggest stereotypes that the other group has of you. So for instance, in an all blue room, it's that we're unpatriotic, that we're not patriotic. And then you drill into that. So you first ask, why is that not true? What evidence do you have it's not true? What's true instead? And then there's that little sense of humility. Why do you think they have that? Is there a kernel of truth in that? Well, yeah, maybe there is a reason that activity alone does exactly what you're talking about, because you're exposing yourself and saying, boy, I hold all these beliefs and they're not true. And I need to be really careful about that.
Eric, have you found that when you get into these conversations, and I'm trying to those stereotypes, that do you find yourself defending what the media puts out as far as the extreme version of what you believe? In other words, you're a libertarian, more middle of the road. You tend to lean conservative. I know you pretty well, but there's the media puts out the very extreme of everything, whatever the most liberal person is and the most conservative person, and the weirdos on the very fringes. And I call them weirdos, not y'all. I have no obligation at all. You're a bunch of freak weirdos when you're on the edges, right? But Eric has to respond and almost be accountable for the extremists. Do you feel that at all in this group, or did that go away pretty quick?
So I think that's part of what the people naturally drawn to Braver Angels are the people that are more likely to be a little bit more in the middle. And I think that's been a valuable part of the conversation, is talking to reds and blues that are willing to have the conversation. I think naturally selects out some of the people that are on the bigger extremes, on the farther right, farther left extremes. And one of the tough challenges for Braver Angels is how far left and how far right can we go to draw in members that are willing to have the conversation. One way of expressing it, psychologists use something called the Overton circle. It's basically the circle. If you're inside that circle, your beliefs are reasonable and mainstream. If you're outside that circle, you're too far extreme. And I think one of the, for example, if you want to allow the president to stay in office no matter what the courts say, he's just going to have to do it. That's outside the Overton circle. That's violating the Constitution. That's totalitarianism. Right. And on the other end of the extreme, if you walk through the streets of your city chanting "Death to America," you're probably a little too far on that end of the extreme. How do we work to bring in those people is a tough problem. But in the meantime, what Braver Angels is doing is finding the people that I think are already inside the Overton circle and trying to figure out how can we build a community, how can we talk about these issues, and then maybe working harder to bring in people from the extremes. The problem that drew me to Braver Angels in the first place is I wanted to have more conversations with people that believe in the United States, that believe in America, that believe in a national community, that would help us identify kind of where that line is and what's going on. Why are there some people so far right or so far left? And can we do something about that?
Lynn, have you found, and then I want to talk some specific stuff, but have you found that, and again, I know you're the object's not to change Eric's mind and the object's not to change your mind, but have you found the way you look at topics has changed? You may not have changed your stance, but maybe it's allowed a little more compromise or some things you didn't know, because I can't imagine you doing this 6 months or 3 years and some of it's not sunk in, that maybe there's some adjustments on my end for how I was looking at stuff.
Absolutely. 100%. I would say what's at my core is still there based on how I'm hardwired.
Yeah.
However, I always use the word, the edges have softened, and I'm more willing to listen. And Eric and I had a recent conversation back and forth about the election and the fairness of the voting and this and that. And we shared articles and websites and things with each other. What it did was help me start questioning some things that I wasn't questioning and looking for truth. And I hope it did the same for Eric. But that's something that has changed with me. I still have my core beliefs about what's right for this country, for our republic and how it should work. Did you catch that, Eric? I still have, he has taught me well. Thank you, Grandpa.
You'll get an invoice from him. Trust me.
I'll tell you, Lynn, that it was Mr. Cheel when I was about 13 years old and I was doing my Boy Scout merit badge on American citizenship. And he asked me that question. I said, well, we're a democracy. And he started chewing me out. No, we're not. Signal Mountain around the year 1980. I'm just telling you.
Yes, I love it.
And I don't even remember who it was. It was Mr. Cheel.
Well, one of the things I brought up to Eric yesterday, two things. One is, I think sometimes it's almost like life. We get so stressed, from work and family and life, and especially the pandemic. We always feel under constant stress in life. I almost feel that way. It's that way now with politics. Politics is everywhere. It's in our sports. It's in our church. It's on our news feed. Politics has just been sucked into everything. And it's almost like a respite. If I could get to a place where I could actually ask questions without somebody calling you, Lynn, a sellout, or on our end calling us conspiracy theorists, right? I just want to know about the election. If Biden's the president, Biden's the president. He's my president. I'm not going to be one of those people that says he's not my president. If he won the election, he's my president. But even moving forward, bringing up the election, I think everybody should go, no, we want to know if it was a fair election because we want to have fair elections in the future. It doesn't necessarily change the results of this election, and that's okay. But we should, from 2016 to 2020, I think we should all, no matter what you believe, want to know that our votes count. And if I can't ask those questions without being demonized, it feels a lot like people are wanting me to shut up and just take it. That's not fair to do to you, and it's not fair to do to me. And I love the fact that we can come to a place like this to talk. But back to what I was saying is, and using that as the jumping off point, I don't know if people really want to be wrong now. I don't know if we're approaching these topics, unless you're an organization like yours, out in the harsh world of social media, the landscape, the barren landscape of social media.
The real world of Twitter.
The real world of Snapchat that fades away in 12 seconds. Well, I don't know how that works. But my point is, I don't know if people approach these ideas really wanting to be wrong. They just want to be right.
Well, I think you're right. Absolutely. And they don't come to Braver Angels. Those people do not come. And when I approach someone and invite them to come into the fold, and they say something to me like that, my response is, well, right now, evidently you're happy with the way things are. And that's great. Good for you. If at some point you are not happy with the way things are, if you would like to see things change in a positive way, if this doesn't feel right to you, then that's the time you come to Braver Angels. Not everybody's ready. To me, it's a process of when you're ready, you will come.
I feel like you're from the Matrix. You're about to offer me the blue pill or the red pill. Clint, the choice is yours. Do you want to stay asleep, sir, or do you want to wake up and come on in? Look at Eric nodding.
Pretty insidious of me, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I just want you to know I'll be taking the red pill.
I
know. Hey, Clint, before you go on, so one of the interesting questions you got to ask, what did we learn in Braver Angels, and what were some of the growing experiences? We had an interesting program that Lynn and I put together about the Social Dilemma movie that's available on Netflix, and we had people watch it for homework. And then we got local Tennessee members, and we did about an hour and a half program one weeknight on Zoom. So everybody got together and had a chance to discuss the movie. And I learned several important things, but the big one that has been the eye-opener for me is how diverse our news feeds have become. And Lynn and I have had this conversation that as much as we like each other and respect each other, there's some things that we've got to work hard to even have a conversation about, because our understanding of the facts is so diverse. Because the news feeds I might get as a conservative or a libertarian sometimes tell a totally different story than what people are hearing if their news feeds are more liberal. And to the point where we can't agree on the facts. So in order to have a civil, respectful conversation, we've got to stop and go, okay, wait a minute. What did you hear? And instead of saying, this is what I know to be true, I've started saying, this is what I've heard on my news feeds. This is what I'm being told. And I don't know if this is 100% true or what the other side is. So let me come to this with an open mind and say, okay, I've heard XYZ about the voting machines or whatever it is. What have you heard about that? And then we can have that conversation going forward. And a really important part of the whole Social Dilemma movie was how diverse those news feeds have become and how addictive social media is and it's designed to be. And getting a group of people, blue, red, across the political divide, I think, Lynn, would you say it's fair to say pretty quickly came to a consensus that, holy crap, we need to pay attention to our diverse news feeds and how addictive it is to be on social media. And it's one of the things that our organization, I think, is very well designed to counter by having in-person meetings and in-person discussions, especially once you can teach people to approach it with a little bit more of an open mind, a little bit of humility, instead of saying, hey, Lynn, this is true, and how can you believe what you believe since this is true?
You unpatriotic person.
Yeah, you unpatriotic person, right. Instead, what I get to say is, all right, Lynn, I'm reading this on the Epic Times and Newsmax and Fox News, and they're all saying the same thing, but I bet, have you even heard about this? Because I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what I've heard about what blank is going on. And that's a much better way to start the conversation than, holy cow, you're so wrong about blank. How can you believe that when I don't even know what she believes or what she's heard?
And the net of all of this is that I have come to believe none of it's true. None of it's true. There is somewhere in between each of those things that is probably the truth. That none of it is 100% accurate and true. The other thing, Eric, I got from that group that I thought was really, you did a fabulous job of leading that conversation, by the way, was that all of us agreed we can be anonymous on social media. Nobody knows who we are. I can go in and blast somebody and then just walk away. And that is so dangerous. And that's where a lot of this stirring begins and a lot of the misinformation comes from.
You know, a couple of months ago, 6, 7 months ago, thanks to the pandemic, I started trying to, and I watched a lot of unrest going on. You know, anyway, it's been a crazy year for everybody. So I'm just one of the millions of people that can go, it's been a crazy year. But I started going and listening to about once or twice a week, an organization, their news clips and videos called the Young Turks. Now, the Young Turks are to politics what Fox News is to politics, except extreme. They are very, very liberal. They don't make any qualms about it. A lot of it is opinions like the Daily Wire almost. But I go and watch some of their stuff until my blood pressure can't handle it. But I do it on purpose. And I think, and it's nothing, I just think we have to seek out things that make us question what we believe. Because if I don't, then when I get in a conversation with Lynn and she starts actually talking to me from a place of trust and honesty, all I'm going to have is my biased echo chamber to come back to her with no room for your opinion, right? I've got to challenge myself. We become soft when none of us like to be challenged. The other thing I was talking about with Eric yesterday, because the one thing I'd already brought up, the second thing is how do you get to where are solutions in this? Is the goal of the organization, because I've never, I know only what Eric and in the brief time I've spent with you, Lynn, is the goal of the organization to teach people how to talk and relate and kind of learn where to compromise and learn how to learn and trust each other? Or is there a part of it where you want to come to some solutions?
We're beginning to understand and describe what we're calling the member's journey. And a member's journey begins with, one, building relationships. And there are ways to do it. One-on-one conversations, joining your local alliance to where you bond together with a group of folks in your area. The second stage of the member's journey is attending workshops and podcasts and debates online and public forums and listening and learning from people. Listen, I watched a couple debates that make my blood boil within my organization. And I think, what is that about, But it's good for me to do that. But then where the rubber hits the road, Clint, two places. Number one, your alliance. Once you have joined and you've gone through, you've drunk the Kool-Aid, you go to an alliance meeting and you as a group of local people begin to say, now what are we going to do about it? And so there is another level of activity called public policy strategies, everything from town hall meetings to action groups. And before the pandemic here in Nashville, our alliance was dealing with gun safety, gun issues, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. And can we even find a place where we come together on this? And we had 3 meetings. We were face to face with reds and blues. And lo and behold, we found common ground areas. And jokingly, we said, gee, what if a group of us, half red, half blue, went to Capitol Hill, went to the Hill here in Nashville, and sat down with some of our legislators and said, look, guys, we're a bipartisan group. Here's what we believe. Listen to us. First of all, we knocked their shoes off because they're not used to that. They're used to one or the other color coming to talk. But that's a way in which we were starting to take action. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't happen as well online. And so for 10 months, we've been on hold. Mm-hmm. But all of our members that were at those meetings, they want to do that again. But that came from learning how to work together as a group, how to have a relationship. Then we were ready to work on something we had in common to make a change. That's how that member's journey kind of takes place.
Yeah. Eric, I would imagine there's groups out there, and you said, Lynn, that people go to, politicians and leaders either representing a blue organization or a red organization with some intent. And I'll just be honest with you. I would imagine they get approached by a lot of groups that claim to be bipartisan and really they have hidden agendas. You know what I'm saying? And I think an organization like this one that actually owns up to it. We're not it's weird. It's not a bipartisan. It's it's red and blue. It's odd to me because it's not we're trying to join up and change the world based off our collective thought. It's we're learning how to talk to each other and start with the end in mind. You know, what do we want from guns? What do we want from race conversations? What do we want from poverty conversations or education conversations? And how do we reverse engineer that to where we can find where we break apart? When you go to the politicians with that and they learn how this organization works, I would imagine they would be like, so you mean I'm not going to get in trouble with either one of you? No, that's we're not going to pick it. We're good. Yeah. Eric, tell me a little bit of other things that you wanted to make sure we talked about, because I'm very tempted and I've done so good. I've got a whole list of topics I didn't bring up that were specific. Maybe down the road, we can have some conversations on specific topics that would be fun so people watching this could see how the conversation actually takes place. And they may go, I want to be part of something like that. So this has been about the organization. What else do you want to make sure people know?
Yeah, so let's talk about how easy it is, hopefully, to join and get involved. So go to braverangels.org, and that's the website, and you can just sign up there. It's only $12 a year. It's designed to be easy to get your foot in the door, to be a member, to sign up. And once you've signed up, then your state organization, Lynn and I, will reach out to you, send you a letter, get you involved, give you an opportunity to get involved. And within the state, we have a thing called alliances. You might call them chapters if it was a different organization. It's in Tennessee, the way we're breaking it down right now is there's 3 grand divisions. We've got a Nashville alliance that's up and running already, and I think eventually Lynn will figure out how wide they're going to go in Middle Tennessee. And we've started an alliance for the Eastern Grand Division of Tennessee that is traditional Upper East Tennessee, East Tennessee, and Southeast Tennessee. And maybe eventually that'll split into 2 parts when it gets enough members. But right now, Eastern Tennessee, from Chattanooga to traditional Upper East Tennessee, Bristol, Knoxville, everywhere in between, is a separate alliance. And one of the nice things that's happened because of the pandemic, everybody's gotten used to Zoom, so it's not that big a deal to have a weekly meeting with people who live in Bristol and Chattanooga. Eventually, I think we'll hopefully have those meetings again in person. Once you sign up and get involved, what Lynn was talking about is the member's journey. Which workshops should you sign up for? When should you learn stuff? And as you keep going through and learning more and more and becoming more and more involved, there becomes more opportunities for leadership, for being involved in particular issues, for attending more seminars, and eventually, like she said, the local alliances may be taking on some political issues, maybe even at the statewide level, taking on some political issues. Those things are all out there. But in the meantime, we're building a community. And I will say, if anybody wants to join and you don't feel like it's perfect, don't hold us too accountable. We're working our tails off to make it the best that we can. But to some extent, we're building airplanes in the sky, is the example I keep using. We're trying to accomplish the mission. We're trying to bring people together. We're trying to improve the experience, all at the same time while we're adding more programs and trying to figure out the best procedures to do all that at a time when our nation really needs an organization like Braver Angels to have already been up and running with decades of experience and programs in place. And so we're trying to do all that all at the same time.
You know, one of the things that I will throw out, and then Lynn, I'll kind of make sure that you get to say what you want to about the organization as well, is I know there was civic organizations like this when I was young. I know there was. I saw some friends get into them in high school, and they won the awards at class night, or they got into stuff. But it seems like we were taught civics and taught a few of these things more focused in when I was younger. And then we saw our adults around us model, I think, better communication back then. That they didn't have the social media. So I watched my mom and dad have one-on-one conversations about things that were difficult, either in our living room or just going through life. So if you're somebody right now and you're watching this and you're in your 20s or 30s and you think this is something that I want to be a part of and growing it, I think it's a perfect place for young people to get involved, to hear all the opinions of people like me who are older and bitter now. I'm bitter and I'm upset about life. And now I get to hand off that bitterness to all these young people. But I think it's a great place for young people to get involved. Would you not? I mean, it seems to me it should attract young people too.
Absolutely. I mean, we're doomed if we don't attract young people. And you know, as an educator, we did a lot of things right and we did a lot of things wrong. And one of the things we did wrong was to take civics out of our curriculum. One of the things we did wrong as a society was to let our children see what it looks like when we disagree, and not model the behavior that we know is ethical and moral and according to, you know, what we learned when we were younger. But I think if you think about these kids, they've had a cell phone in their hands since they've been born. Mm-hmm. Social media has been around since they've been born. Their world is totally different. So it is critical that we show them what it looks like, because honestly, they have no role models to see what it looks like.
And a lot of the stuff that, Lynn, a lot of stuff that you believe in that brought you into the liberal fold, and a lot of stuff that Eric believes in, is not being taught and shared. And so a lot of times these kids now believe things because they just are supposed to. Their friends are watching this news source, or it's a headline, and I want to be cool. I don't know why I believe it. I don't even know. And I've used this, you know, example before. I don't know why the fence is up. And I've said this, you know, you walking through the forest and you see a fence, instead of cutting it, you may want to find out why the fence is there. So before you just start trashing the Constitution, or before you start trashing the way things work, figure out why it's in the place. And once you realize this is useless, then you can start trying to change it. Or, oh, that's why it's there. I think we can all agree, though, no matter how old the kids are that come in, the music from the 60s, 70s, and 80s was much better than the music nowadays. And that's something I think should bring us.
Actually, Clint, I got to disagree with you. You started out right. It's 60s and 70s. As soon as you said music in the 80s, we're done.
No, sir.
Music went downhill.
You back off. Now, wait, am I supposed to frame this conversation? What's your definition of good, Eric? What's your definition of good? All right. So, Lynn, I'm going to give you the final word here. We're rolling up on 50-something minutes, and you've been very gracious with your time. So, are there anything that we have not discussed about the organization that you want to make sure people know, or something that just you normally say that I haven't given you the opportunity to?
Wow. You got an hour? No.
Yeah.
I'm a hybrid. I grew up half my life in Pennsylvania and the other half in Tennessee. And I'm here in Tennessee because I love this state. I love the people that I've met. I love the lifestyle. I love just the pace. This is a great place to be. And I am disappointed that more Tennesseans are not coming forward to get involved in this. I think we have a long tradition, both in our country and probably in Tennessee, of coming forward and standing up for what we think is right and just. And so I would invite Tennesseans to step up and give us a try. If you want to know how to give us a try, write to Eric, write to me, whoever you're comfortable with. And we'll give you some suggestions. We have a red-blue workshop coming up in January. We have a depolarizing within, where blues get together and talk about what are we doing to make this situation worse. We got to stop talking within our own house because we're making things worse. The same with reds. So we'll channel people based on what they like to do, and we'll encourage them to get involved. And then that makes you feel better. And as Tennesseans, I think that we see a lot of suffering around us. We see a lot of people who are really struggling. And if we're not there for each other, we're not going to fix it.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. And again, there may have been a few times we froze up technology-wise, but I think it was a pretty good podcast. If there's anything that you missed, if anybody missed and they want to find out more, the website's been on scroll at the bottom of the screen, and the website is in the description. Or you can reach out to Lynn, Heady, or Eric Buchanan, because they are the co-chairs of Braver Angels for the state of Tennessee, the red chair and the blue chair. And now that we've properly labeled you, and, you know, and in an organization we're trying not to label, you're blue, maybe you're aqua or whatever, green, or we'll come up with a different color. Eric, anything I left off, sir?
You're doing great, Clint. Thank you so much for having us on.
I think it was a great conversation. Now, moving forward, maybe we pick out a topic that's not too hot and let everybody see how, you know, you two kind of navigate it, because I think it would be interesting to see how ground rules are set and how Lynn, how you prevent Eric from losing his temper, because he's got
It's not easy with a lawyer, let me tell you. He's always fighting a case. I feel very inept when I get a note copy.
Does he ever do this? Does he ever do like the old 70s, attorney shows? Does he ever go, that's interesting, Lynn. Now, if I could show you this chart, so tell me more about this picture, Lynn. How do you explain that?
With that on it that says Eric Buchanan at the bottom. Yeah.
Thank you both very much. Y'all have a great day. And
thanks, Lynn, for being on.
Oh, I appreciate it. I love this stuff.
For us. Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.